Hers was actually in the water tub, which I definitely encourage you, if you're considering it, it is such a beautiful delivery experience because, one, you don't feel something that's called the ring of fire, which is when they're crowning and they're going exiting your body. There is a pain that explains it the best. Ring of fire. You don't feel it in the water. You also don't tear much at all. I actually didn't tear at all with Natalia. With Eliana, I did because it was so sudden and I wasn't in the water. I wish I got in the water, but afterwards we ended up with Ellie getting back in the water and just keeping her calm. But the other part of that is, if you think about pregnancy and being a baby, try and imagine being a baby for a minute. You're in this warm, cozy, comfortable place for 9 months. And then suddenly you're welcomed into the world and you don't know. It's very shocking. It's very traumatic. For the mama, it's almost like you're in a car accident because parts of your body are an organ literally comes out, the placenta. So many traumatic things are happening.
Hello and welcome to the Wellness Trinity podcast, where we interview top holistic experts and bring you natural solutions for modern day wellness. Let's get started with your host, Dr. Jacqueline.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining the Wellness Trinity podcast. I'm Dr. Jacqueline from thewellnesstrinity.com, where we provide natural solutions for modern day wellness. Today, we're going to discuss natural tips and tools for postpartum recovery with Nicole Moore. Just a little disclaimer before we get started, what we discuss in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you do with the information is to be used at your discretion, as the recommendations are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This episode was brought to you by Cellcore Biosciences. Creating solutions that work is what they do, and restoring hope and health is who they are. Are you having a hard time conceiving? Are you concerned about raising healthy children? Would you like to age gracefully? These are all concerns that many women have. And in order to have healthy pregnancies and children and age gracefully with youthful skin, vibrant wellness, and incredible joints, we need to thoroughly cleanse the body in this day and age, because there are more than 85,000 chemicals that are just plaguing the earth. And these chemicals cause a whole slew of problems. And a lot of it is related to the backup in the liver that causes diminished hormone production. Cellcore Biosciences protocol systematically removes layers of infections and toxins, thus fully cleansing the body. It gets you back to homeostasis, where your body is happiest and healthiest when done correctly. I am happy to be on this protocol, and I'm actually waiting to get pregnant because I want myself and my husband to be thoroughly cleansed before I even think of having a baby. And I don't fear growing old and falling apart, because I know that if my body is at homeostasis, it's going to be just fine. I was told I look 10 years younger in my new headshot, so this stuff works. To learn more about the Cellcore protocol, go to thewellnesstrinity.com/cellcore-detox. So I met Nicole Moore when I was going to Encounter Church in Las Vegas, and she was so sweet to come up to me after they were doing some type of event, and I went up and I shared a little bit of my testimony, what I do, and she was excited to meet someone on the same path with her with health and wellness, and in our spiritual walk as well. And so she came up, introduced herself, and we became friends. And then we ended up doing a couple workshops together on pregnancy, and that's when I really started kind of digging deep on pregnancy, and my conclusion really was, you got to be healthy from conception. If the parents are not healthy, then the kids are just not going to be the healthiest either. And then on top of that, some people are just, they can't have they can't get pregnant. They have miscarriages, they have postpartum depression. I mean, there's so many things that go around this, that it all starts from even before they're even pregnant. And a lot of this is just not talked about, where you have to get healthy before you even get pregnant. So I'm happy to be back with her today and talk more about this subject. And we're going to focus on postpartum today. I have other people on this women's health series that are going to talk about different aspects of women's health, and then before the pregnancy, after the pregnancy, and just women's health in general, menopause. So we have all kinds of good stuff that are going to be coming soon with this podcast. Now, Nicole Moore is a certified health coach. She received her certification through INN, which is the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. She helps clients work on attaining their holistic health goals. She is focused on providing support specifically for those interested in making changes in their lifestyle as well as the home lifestyle, including major shift changes to support a healthy immune system through the physical, spiritual, emotional, and relational aspects of the whole person. Nicole is also a wife and mom of 3 spunky children, 5 and under. Paul is 5, Eliana is 3, and Natalia is 2. 2 of her 3 children were home birthed, and 1 has experienced the whole WFPB diet from conception, and I'm sure she's going to have to explain that one for all of us. All 3 of her children were breastfed. Besides coaching, she spends her time taking care of her children, researching about whole food, plant-based eating, and cooking. She also spends time daily exercising for physical health and mental clarity. Email Nicole for her delicious iron-building recipes for pregnancy and postpartum recovery. That's her free gift to you guys. And for anyone that watches the show and mentions the show, they also will get a discount of an extra 10% off. If you're a couple, you'll get 20% off. And she'll explain those details and more when you reach out to her. All right, Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you have 3 children, and that's a lot more than me at this point. So for those of you guys that are listening, I don't have any children yet, but maybe I'm doing this series to prepare myself. I know my mom will be happy hearing that. Yeah. She's waiting to be a grandmother for the last, I don't know, decade. Anyways, so can you share, you had home births, and that's not really the norm. It seems a lot more normal in Las Vegas than other places I've lived. But
Right.
Can you tell us about that? Like, why did you even decide to do that?
Sure, no problem. So along my health journey, I'll shorten this up, but I'd had some health issues. I was pretty overweight and headed down a bad path of probably being diabetic, just like my father. And that's kind of my testimony for doing health coaching, because that's how I got there. As I was going through the process with my husband and I, we had been married about a year, and we chose to want to continue that natural process. So we chose to do as much as we could naturally with our son, Paul. But we weren't ready. We wanted to do a home birth because we knew that it would be more calm, and we believed that after watching some documentaries, I'm sure many of you heard the Business of Being Born, all different documents like that. I learned more about the body and learned about the birthing process. So with my son, we did a hospital birth that was induced. So there was intervention that led to him being suctioned out, which was not my goal at all. And I ended up getting an epidural, which was not my goal at all. But that being said, with the other 2 births, it didn't get that way because I made that decision ahead of time that we're just going to do it at home and find a midwife that we felt comfortable with that was very, very knowledgeable. So we did the hospital birth, learned, and we weren't going to do it again. It wasn't the worst experience, but it wasn't comfortable for me. I wanted to be in my house, to be able to walk around, to be able to eat when I felt that I needed that energy, or to drink. So after that hospital experience, we went home and we decided the next one is going to be a home birth. Little did we know that my daughter, 16 months later, that we were going to get pregnant that soon. But that birth actually was quite interesting. If any of you have thought of home births, there can be this fear that, oh, what if this happens? What's going on? So we drilled our midwife with every question possible. What do we do if something's not right? And she's able to check the baby's heartbeat, check the baby's movement, if they're placed right, if they look like they're going to deliver correctly. So she answered very clearly. It was actually Tiffany Gonzalez, and maybe we can tag her on this. She did a great job of birthing both of my girls. But actually, our first daughter, Eliana, we had just started getting to essential oils, which are very powerful and very useful. With that being said, they're very powerful, and they could cause the birthing process to go a little faster than you think. So with my daughter Eliana, we were at home, and I thought to myself, honey, we're going to have this baby today. I could feel it at noon. I was like, I know. We already, my water, not my water, my plug already broke, and many of you will learn about this. This is the thing that plugs you up so you don't lose your water. And that already started coming out. And I said, I think this baby's coming soon. So as the contractions kind of changed a little, I didn't want to slow down my contractions. So I decided to take it into my own hands a little, and I started diffusing some essential oils. Clary sage is very strong and useful for keeping the contractions going. I would never encourage someone to do that before the process started. But the contractions kept going, And my midwife said, well, I think this is going to take, normally it would have taken quite a while, and you're probably going to be up for a while. So checked in with me at about 4 p.m. and at about 6 p.m. checked in with me again, and things were going pretty steady, but still not progressing as much as she expected. Then because I was still diffusing, I finally turned it off because it was getting to the point where I was diffusing and the contractions were getting closer and closer. So I did what she expressed, go and take a hot shower or bath, or warm shower bath, and I got 3 contractions within 5 minutes and thought, oh, something's changing here. Went from there to, as I was drying off to get out of the shower, another one came on, and then went into my bedroom and my water broke on the bed. Don't worry, you plan to have things to protect your mattress and your whole room. And I knew at that point, as I was doing my pelvic rocks, it's a way that you rock your pelvis and your hips to keep things loose, that she was coming. So we called my midwife and explained to her that's going on. She goes, oh my, okay, I'll be heading there. That was not expected at all. And my little Eliana, if you get to know her personality, is very much the person that goes on her own speed when she wants to come. So she kept moving along, and she actually crowned as we were on the phone, and my midwife was about 15 minutes away. And so my husband, he reached his hand out. I don't know, in the moment, you don't always think clear. I tease him all the time. Why didn't you put the phone on speaker? But he reached out and caught her to break the fall. He didn't fully catch her with one hand, other hand on the phone. And she made it in just fine. And this is something I share all the time. All the other towels that were sanitized, we're concerned, we want this to be the most sanitary birth, were all being used and ready in their placement. And the only towel we had left, because we couldn't even get in the water tub, things went so quickly, was my son's once used bath towel. So she landed on that. But she came out just fine. And we sat there, he held me up, sat behind me, and we held her until the midwife came, and she gurgled. For some reason, I had no fear. I wasn't nervous about the gurgling and what was going on. But she was fine. It's a natural process of getting the junk out. Some midwives choose to use the suction just like the doctors do to clear the airway and clear the spit up. Other midwives may not use it as much and let the baby do as much as they can on their own. So that was my first experience. We pretty much birthed our baby a little bit on our own, and then Tiffany came in and she did a great job of cleaning the baby up, checking the heart rate, checking the responses. They do something at the very beginning where they hold the baby up and they do this natural response. I don't know the term of it, but they will actually take steps as you're holding them. So they'll put their legs out like they're kind of walking, but they're not putting the weight on their legs all the way. And so she's doing everything she's supposed to do. So that was our first experience. The baby was born at like 8:20 in the evening. Though we could have gone to bed that night, we couldn't go to bed till like 3 in the morning. We were so hyped about, we just birthed our baby. So that was my first experience with Eliana, and went great. She nursed just fine. And the beautiful part about nursing, if you choose to do this, I really encourage it. There's a lot of studies out there that explain how it'll build up your daughter or son, your child's immune system, but also help you to lose the weight and help the contractions to make your uterus smaller to what the original size was. But there's that bonding, and that first colostrum is the first stuff that comes out of the milk, and it's clear. You wouldn't think it's very potent, but it's super important. It has a lot of nutrients, vitamins, and helps the child to not only bond with you, but also become stronger and healthy as they get into what they call the 4th trimester, which doesn't make sense because it's a trimester, but 4th trimester is this process and this term of they're still babies. They still feel like they want to be in the womb. So she did great. We went through that process, and then come along 2 years later, we got pregnant with Natalia, and she is going to be 2 this July. So I put 2 on there, but she'll be 2 on July 4th. That was her due date. And you'll learn something interesting about your body. Everybody's body's a little different, but with my children, my son Paul was induced because he was 2 weeks late. When you work with a doctor in a hospital, they have a timeline they have to go on, and they have to make sure that the baby comes within that because of liability, concerns about being sued or stillbirth, which is understandable, but not every baby seems to take either that much time, 40 weeks, and some take a little longer. So my son Paul could have probably gone to 42 weeks, but he was induced at 41, and Eliana was a home birth, and she actually came at 42 weeks. So I thought, surely my daughter Natalia is going to come late, but we'll see. Maybe she'll come. She came on her due date, which is July 4th, and a very punctual 12:05 a.m. delivery. Hers was actually in the water tub, which I definitely encourage you, if you're considering it. It is such a beautiful delivery experience because one, you don't feel something that's called the ring of fire, which is when they're crowning and they're going exiting your body. There is a pain that explains it the best. Ring of fire. You don't feel it in the water. You also don't tear much at all. I actually didn't tear at all with Natalia. With Eliana, I did because it was so sudden and I wasn't in the water. I wish I got in the water, but afterwards we ended up with Ellie getting back in the water and just keeping her calm. But the other part of that is, if you think about pregnancy and being a baby, try and imagine being a baby for a minute. You're in this warm, cozy, comfortable place for 9 months. And then suddenly you're welcomed into the world and you don't know. It's very shocking. It's very traumatic. For the mama, it's almost like you're in a car accident because parts of your body are an organ literally comes out, the placenta. So many traumatic things are happening. For the baby, it's going from being in a quiet, calm, dark place to a bright, loud, sensory overload experience, right? So that's why I really enjoyed the experience of the water birth for the baby because I know she was calmer. She was my calmest of the three. And when she started to become a little more alert, it happens much quicker, I noticed, with the babies that were born at home because they didn't have medication in their body and they came on their own schedule. But she was just a peaceful baby. Now, whether or not that's her personality, I think a lot of it plays, the role is played through the delivery and that experience. Because if your first experience in life is a peaceful one, I can imagine that helps set the stage for rest of your experience. So sorry, that's a long story, but 3 births. And now we're here today.
Well, that's good context for this all too, because, obviously, the difference between what it is to have a hospital birth, and then the difference between having the second and the third one at home, but even the different intricacies of how you had them at home obviously play a different role. And, when I was at Hippocrates Health Institute, this is when I realized, or when I first started learning about how the first connection that a child has with their parent, with their mom, is very important. If you just take them out and then you put them in an incubator somewhere else and they're scared, they can actually harbor that fear later times in their life, whether they realize it or not. And then they're carrying this thing that they don't even know they're carrying. And so, I'm very sensitive and alert and to some of those things that, as I'm planning to have children, and I know people on this podcast plan to have children, I hope that you guys are thinking about little things like that too, because how we love and we nurture our children really do make a difference, starting from the time they're conceived to the time they're born and in your hands. And then as you raise them up, it's not just 5 years down the road. It's, that first time they come out to in the first 5 years, I mean, that really sets the stage for so much of their personality and who they are. And I've met your children. And so your young one, I haven't gotten to know her too much, but in the time that I was there in Las Vegas still, I mean, she is a very, very peaceful daughter. I don't even think I've ever heard her cry. I've seen you at church with her, and I'm amazed, and I know it's a lot of this has to do with because of how you birth her and how you nurture your children as well.
Well, and of course, it's interesting when you get the dynamics of more kids together, things do change. She has learned how to scream pretty loud now because she has 2 others that are teaching her. We're working on that. But yes, I definitely want to echo what you're saying about the birth story. There's birth trauma and a lot of discussion about birth trauma and how even just, and I've seen it with my son, the suctioning of his head out of the birth canal. He still is very like, don't touch my head. And he still gets very upset if someone keeps touching his head. He's very sensitive to that area of his body. Not that, you see a little kid and you pat him on their head and he's like, no, please don't do it. No. And sometimes if he's in a bad mood, he may not respond so gently. But yes, the birth experience is beautiful and can be traumatic, or it can be peaceful. And it can be peaceful. I think a lot of people think birth is going to be scary and it's going to be so painful. Well, yeah, it's going to be painful, but there's ways to make it less painful. There's ways to make it a beautiful dance and a beautiful, less painful experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Because honestly, I'm a little bit nervous to be honest. But it's just what women do, right? If you're gonna have children, you just have to go through it, right? But anyways, on that note though, how do you prepare for an easy birth recovery, or even easy birthing process so that the recovery is better.
So it doesn't start right at that point, obviously. Once we talked about the beginning of being healthy and clean from toxins when you conceive, and that whole process, once you conceive, it's important, and a lot of people worry, oh, can I exercise? It's important to stay active because you're keeping your body, think of it this way, you're doing a marathon, you train up to do a marathon. So you don't just run the marathon at the very end. You train up and you do, so before I got pregnant, I was doing a little exercise of walking. I tried to do 30 minutes a day. I'll be honest with you, there's times when you've got, especially with 2 kids, you may not get to it, but I did my best to walk and exercise and use videos. There's a lot of resources out there, but exercise is important. Resources as far as people that'll post videos on YouTube that have done births themselves. I'm going to just mention a few exercises. There's something called pelvic rocking, like I mentioned, where you basically would get on all fours and rock your pelvis back and forth to keep that area loose. And when you're pregnant, your lower back will start hurting because there's something happening in your spine and it's curving the way it's not supposed to that much. It's supposed to be more of an S, not a saggy, heavy S or whatever. So the pelvic rocking. Another thing that is recommended during pregnancy is Kegels. And that's when you try not to go pee, but you want to go. You hold it in, you hold your urine in. It's just practicing that. The other thing is posture practice. And that's something more so when you're pregnant. I did a Bradley method class with my son when I was pregnant with him. It's talking about your posture when you're sitting. One of the moves is to cross your legs, just crisscross style, and sitting up against a wall and just trying to have the best posture you can, because you want to fix as much as you can what's going on down in your spine. So that's a little exercise just to give your body a little bit of a break. And then the other idea is that the posture practice and the support of how, when you do have the child, how you breastfeed. If you start with the practice of doing it with pillows underneath, and I'll mention La Leche later in the details, but they'll show you how to put the baby at the right angle so that you can not start having shoulder posture issues, not having more pain. So those are the 3 things I mentioned with the exercise. There's more to it. If you walk daily, very important. Whatever you did before you got pregnant, most doctors and midwives will say, just keep doing that. My friend who had her baby, I think she had a hospital birth, but she was a weightlifter and still is a weightlifter. And so she's lifting 50 pounds before she got pregnant. She can still lift the 50 pounds when she's pregnant, or more, but within reason. I've never done weightlifting per se. I've lifted, 20 pounds and done the arm weights, which is still really good to do while you're pregnant because you're going to have to hold that baby. But the important exercise is part of it, because you're training up till that final marathon of having the child come out, and you have the energy and you have stamina and you'll have the muscle control. And exercise is very important.
Yeah, and you said, so the key is that you don't want to start something extreme. You just you continue where you were at. So if you weren't a marathon runner, you're not going to really run marathons. Although that doesn't sound the most healthy for a pregnant woman to run a marathon. Maybe there is, maybe there is a too much, huh?
I know an actual woman that shared her story, and you can look it up if you'd like, who actually birthed their baby after they ran a marathon. But they didn't necessarily run. I think they probably went a little slower, but yes, it probably wouldn't be a great idea. But like walking, probably not jolting, because you don't want to jog and make things start too early. Even yoga, if that's something you hadn't done before and you want to do it when you become pregnant, that is usually something you can start trying, because you're not doing any extreme movement. That's more about a fluidity of movement and keeping the joints comfortable and the body balanced. So there are a lot of pregnancy and postpartum yoga that you can find online too.
Okay. And then you talk about hydration as something that's very important too for the postpartum period, right?
Yes. So you're going to be losing a lot of water and fluids when you're having the baby. And typically, if you're in a hospital setting, you don't get necessarily a lot of water intake through the mouth. So there's a lot of IV saline input in your body. But at a home birth, you get to do whatever you like. I recommend, like I kept mentioning, hydration is so important, because we want to, be able to be functioning. Our bodies are 70% water. And if we're losing that hydration through the birth, just to keep things like coconut water is a very good, it's high in potassium, which we need for muscle contractions, but it's also a great recovery drink. Like, it's not Gatorade that has all these strange sugars, or maybe not even sugars in there. It's got natural sweetness of the sugar that'll help boost up your energy. Another thing that can be drank as well, besides water and coconut water, is maybe right after. A lot of times our blood sugar will crash for obvious reasons. You lost a lot of blood and you worked out pretty hard. So having fresh squeezed orange juice would be ideal, because then you get the great nutrients from a fresh squeezed orange. But a lot of times we can't always do that. And the husband is a huge role, or the partner is a huge role in having this baby. But wherever they can help step in through the birth, whether they're comfortable being there to catch the baby, they won't catch the baby, the midwife would. But in my situation, that was Dan's situation. Dan helped. Is to make sure you have a setup. When we're talking about hydration, have someone that's going to be coming, checking your water, checking your, do you need more of this if you don't feel like moving that much? Because at a certain point, there is a process of the birth. And I'm sure you'll have the other person speak about this, but there's a process of the early on part, and then there's transition where you can't really talk and you're in so much pain that you're just pushing through that. And then once you get past that, the baby starts coming down on it and naturally. But the hydration is part of that. If you think about it, if you've got a well-oiled and lubed car and you want the parts to move correctly, you got to keep and make sure you check your oil often. So same thing with birth. If you're starting to get a little dehydrated, the baby might stick a little. I mean, not literally, but there may be a slowdown. And try not to be too graphic, but this is birth.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is. And if you're not hydrated enough, you may start to get a headache. You may start to not be able to think clearly, which a lot of times birthing isn't about thinking the clearest. It's about doing what you naturally do. We were made this way. That's how God has made our bodies, to know what to do next. And hydration helps us think clearly and just be more calm, because we're not under a situation of being dehydrated. So yeah.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, so we need water to absorb our B vitamins and our C vitamins, and those very much support our adrenal glands. So if we're dehydrated, we're not going to be able to absorb all our nutrients as well. And those are, speaking about anxiety, if your adrenal glands aren't supported in that way, then you're gonna be more anxious. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I love the graphics. So let's just tear it all apart, and let's just tell the truth. So I want to hear, I want to know, I really want to know, because we'll see, maybe in the next few years we'll plan on having some children, but I'd like to prepare myself, and maybe some people listening are in the same place too. So I'd rather just know the truth and be set up for success versus be blindsided and all of a sudden I'm dehydrated and giving birth and things are getting stuck. That does not sound nice.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Jacqueline, when we're talking about hydration, I've always learned that the basic thing is half your weight in ounces is good for keeping yourself hydrated. Now, when you're pregnant, I would up that. You can never overhydrate, really. I mean, your body gets rid of it naturally, but I would do that and then plan for whatever the volume is. And I should have this memorized, of the fluid that's in your in with the baby in the uterus.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the baby needs water too. So not only do you need your own, the baby will need its own water as well. So yeah, and we want the baby to have all the nutrients absorbed too. I think water is very largely underestimated sometimes, and how much it does for the body. So thank you for bringing that up in terms of how it relates to the birthing process as well too.
And one last thing, side note I want to say on that, and I know you'd be on the page of this, is it's important that we have clean water, not just generally tap water is not the cleanest. There are maybe places that have cleaner tap water, but just to have filtered, we use an RO, reverse osmosis system. We're blessed to have one of those, but to have clean water and to have, if you're going to do any juices or anything, to make sure that they're organic as much as possible. But the baby gets whatever you take in. And this will lead to, when I talk about this next, I don't know where you're going to lead me, but with the placenta, whatever you take in, the placenta will get it too. And it in ways acts as a filter. And if you're planning to use that afterwards, you want to make sure you're keeping things as clean as possible. Now, this isn't some prison that you're in because you're pregnant and you can't do anything fun. There's, and you mentioned how I could share things with people if they email me. There's sweet treats that can be good for you and the baby. So we're not like in prison of, oh, I'm pregnant, I can't have anything fun. You can. There's good food. God made all this delicious food, fruits, everything. We just figure out how to do it in a healthy way and delicious way. Because I actually was making chocolate for pregnancies, one of the recipes, and chocolates are good, right?
So I hope that's in your book.
It is.
Oh, okay. I remember when we did our workshops, we were making chocolate. And the thing is, if you don't put the sugar in it, I mean, you could put stevia. I've made chocolate with stevia, and I think it tastes good. Now, not everyone likes stevia, and the type of stevia you use makes a huge difference on whether it tastes good or not, or if it just tastes like chemicals. And so just like anything else, you always have to look for the less toxic option, and the most organic. And then she hit the nail on it. I mean, I went on an adventure at some point because I thought, well, okay, if I want to eat healthy, I should say, and there has to be a way to eat healthy, and it tastes good, right? So why not? And so I started learning how to cook, and then looking up these different recipes, and started realizing, oh my God, you can have your cake and eat it too. Now, there's a time and a place for different types of diets and all that as well. I mean, I never recommend sugar, but if you have some fruit here and there, for most people, I think it's good. But in terms of like white sugar, or I don't like using agave or maple syrup or anything like that, because it just spikes your sugar as well too. Even honey, I'm not really much of a fan of now that I've cut it out, because of the whole sugar situation. So you just have to figure out how to make it well. I mean, there's all kinds of, like, even if you look up keto recipes, there's a lot of, you can find like a keto cake. I mean, we're talking about sweets right now, so that's kind of why I'm on that wavelength. But you can find a keto cake recipe with almond flour and without any sugars, and they use things like stevia instead to sweeten it. So you're not spiking your blood sugar and causing issues. So that's a great point that you made. And I know it's so simple for some people, but it's so profound for those that have not come to that realization yet.
Right. It's the whole process. And if you don't mind, we had talked about maybe talking about the diet. I can share a little bit about my experience. Is that okay? So personally, my husband and I became plant-based, whole food plant-based, which the WFPB, I shouldn't leave the initials, for health reasons. I almost got diagnosed. I'm never going to label it as I have, because I've taken over it. So it doesn't have me. I was almost diagnosed with MS. And through that process, I was like, okay, I'm not doing the typical medical plan, because I don't want steroids. I don't want all those things. So we started looking at our food and our supplements. And Dr. Jacqueline gave us and helped me through a detox program with supplements from her. But with the diet, it's so super important when you're pregnant to be looking at what you're eating, and before, as we mentioned. One of the important parts is healthy fats. We don't have to be scared of fats. We don't have to be scared of grains or any of those things, but looking at the healthy portion of it. So I've done some coconut oil, but avocados are more natural in the natural form. Avocados, nuts, and seeds. Since we went plant-based, those are where we got most of our fats. And we never were low on fat intake. It's easy to just want to keep going. Actually, I have some almonds right here and pistachios that I'm not going to chew on, so you don't hear me chewing like a cow. But healthy fats are super important, and the fats like the nuts themselves, they'll have a good amount of iron in it. And as you're building up your blood supply in your body, you're going to want to make sure you have a lot of iron and vitamin C food so you can absorb it, and magnesium for iron, magnesium for smooth muscle contraction, and make sure that you're never, because this happens time and time again when you're pregnant, you might get a knot in your calf muscle or somewhere, a spasm while you're asleep, and you may wake up going, oh my gosh, who punched me? Like, what just happened? And you realize your body, that's a sign that, one, you're probably a little dehydrated and you probably don't have enough magnesium. And I'm sure Dr. Jacqueline will probably never get to that point, because you're pretty good about getting your supplements. But we never know. Your baby may just need more of it than others, than your other baby. I'm not saying you're having more than one, but so it's super important, especially postpartum, that you can have the smooth muscle contractions when you're looking at having, if you're breastfeeding, your body has to make that uterus back down to the normal size. So if you're breastfeeding, you want to make sure that you are getting the magnesium and the supplements, and you get things back. So that's part of the diet, the supplementation. And there's foods that have magnesium. Even I know dates are quite sweet, but there's foods like dates. There's other foods that have a high magnesium level, some nuts that have good magnesium in them. I believe Brazil nuts, correct me if I'm wrong, and pistachios have a good amount of magnesium. But This is me trying to remember and know all this when sometimes our minds are a little distracted when you've had a few kids and we can get distracted, but it comes back.
Right. So, well, Brazil nuts has a lot of selenium, which is good for your thyroid.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, especially,
Yeah.
I don't know about the magnesium content, but I know Brazilian nuts. I mean, just a little bit of Brazil nuts, and you're getting a lot of selenium. And that's so many people have thyroid conditions, and that's hugely linked to people's hormones being thrown off as well too.
Right.
So I would eat it for that.
Yeah, right. And so many times we think, oh, well, I'm gonna have to take a medication for this hormone imbalance. And no, it's been put in by the creator. It's in the seeds, the nuts, the foods that we eat, and it'll help your body hormone balance. And that's why diet is not diet, like I'm just gonna do this for a period of time, but like how would you call it, instead of just a diet, but like a way of living basically, and how you consume and get nutrients, because
nutrition. I like to call it that.
Yeah, nutrition.
Yeah, just because
Simple.
I hate the word diet too, because it has a really bad connotation to it, and it makes people think like, okay, I'm going to just do this, like you said, and that's it. And I will say, like I said, there's a certain time for certain types of ways of living or ways of eating, nutrition plans, diet plans, whatever you want to call it. But then especially if someone's sick, for example, too, maybe they need to do more periods of fasting, or maybe they need to do certain types of diets versus not. And maybe sometimes, I know you're more plant-based. I was plant-based. I still am pretty plant-based. I do personally eat a little bit of meat, and I think that people have to figure out what works best for their body, because I know that if I don't, then my brain function does not work too well. And my energy is pretty low too if I don't have just a little bit. I mean, I think the problem is people eat too much, and then they're eating the wrong kinds as well too, that are full of hormones and all kinds of stuff that our body's just not meant to take in. So and then if we have infections, we're not digesting it properly too. So there's a whole nother rabbit hole with all that. We'll stick to the postpartum goodies here. But you're talking about magnesium, and so obviously that's going to be very good for helping with pain during the labor and after, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super helpful. I remember taking Epsom salt bath, which I believe it has magnesium in it.
Yeah.
And so I would take a bath if I remembered, because sometimes I'd get distracted with my other babies. They're still babies at that point. It's so weird to think about that. But just getting in there and calming yourself down, and even starting that process of like, how do I calm myself down before I have this baby? So when I get to that point where it's crazy intense, that I know how to bring myself to a peaceful place. And I know we were going to talk about that a little later on, but just being able to focus, meditate, and pray, and have calming processes that you can practice. I mentioned the Bradley method class. That was useful for me to practice that. Not pretending, but imagining what it might be like to have a lot of pain and yet to be able to calm down.
Wow.
So yeah, magnesium does help you with that as well, because it calms you down.
Yeah.
And it'll help with the postpartum contractions as well.
And then there's essential oils that are good for the birth contractions and after too. I know you mentioned clary sage, so that you actually start diffusing that while you're.
I did diffuse it. Yeah, I diffused it with Eliana, which was my second, and that's when the contractions had slowed down a little bit, and I just thought, well, let's just keep this going. And I put some frankincense and a few other essential oils in there, but the majority of the drops were clary sage. And there was always that warning, like with in the natural birth field, a lot of people say, just be careful with that stuff. It's very strong. And people that do essential oils will say that, be very careful. And I'd always be afraid, like, oh, I better not even touch it, have it across the room. Well, it's not that extreme, but it definitely made a huge difference. Every time I'd inhale the diffusion, because I kind of got close to the diffuser every once in a while just to get a sniff of it, a contraction would come on. And I'm like, oh, wow, this really, okay, it does it. But I would say that would be the main essential oil for getting the contractions consistent. Like I said before, I wouldn't do it if you're I would never try and speed things up, because once again, the creator knows how long the time is right. The baby knows when the time is right. I'm sure I've learned, and I don't have the link to this to explain it, but basically when the baby's ready to come out, and I can find this information for you, they send out a hormone when their lungs are fully developed. And that means the birthing process is going to start. And then the mama's body starts the process of birthing. So it's a beautiful, like I said, dance. It is kind of like a little dance that goes on in there, a really intense, almost feeling like a fight dance, but it doesn't have to. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So are there other essential oils that you recommend
Lavender
with the birthing process or after?
Yeah, lavender is useful for after. I wouldn't necessarily do it during. With my son, I feel like I want to attribute the slowing down of the birth with that to my son, to the lavender, because I was smelling it and I was like, oh, I need to calm down. And suddenly the contractions were further apart, and I'm going, oh, okay. So lavender is great for recovery, and it's also a wonderful essential oil for treating the baby. If they have rashes, melaleuca and lavender have been my go-to. But yeah, lavender is really good for recovery. Anything that's a soothing oil. I can't think of other ones, but lavender is my go-to on that one right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so what about the placenta? Let's talk about that. Now, the first word that comes to my mind is hippie. My sister probably like, you are such a hippie for even considering this.
Right.
But it's a natural thing to eat the placenta, right? And people encapsulate it. Why do people do that? Why would people want to do that? Tell us it all.
So obviously it's kind of a taboo subject in the mainstream of eating or consuming the placenta. I'd like to say more so consuming it, because eating sounds like ravage animals. But most mammals, almost all mammals, minus humans, consume the placenta. Part of it is so that they don't get hunted down, and then the blood smell is something that brings about predators. But also, it's interesting how even the animals know what their body needs. They are able to for the humans. I mean, I'm not an animal, so we haven't done studies on that. But for the humans in the studies I looked up, it actually helps recover your iron level, recover your help you to increase your milk supply. And at the beginning, the milk supply comes gradually, but it still will help that kind of become set. It'll help balance hormones. These are the three things that it's been focused on. So there's ways to do the placenta. With our first child, with Paul, I had it encapsulated. So I took it from the hospital, and you have to sign a waiver explaining that you're taking what they consider trash, basically, but it's not. And you take it to a midwife or someone that knows how to dry the placenta and make it into capsules. And so I took that, and I noticed a little bit of a change with that one. But once again, I wasn't thinking ahead on that placenta, on what I was eating. When I did the Bradley class, I kind of focused more on eating every protein I could find possible, which don't do that. Your body doesn't need every single protein out there. Just focus on what you're doing. At the time, we were eating meat still. And I was eating all sorts of strange things like swine, feral swine that I found at Sprouts. And now I'm like, okay, we learned afterwards we didn't need that. But also,
what swine?
Feral swine. It was frozen. It looked like it was healthy. And we're like, we'll try it out. I've tried every other meat. No, not a good idea. But feral, I don't know what that exactly means. But so we found out, we learned, right? You kind of want to try new things. I'm the adventurous one. So I'm like,
wait, hold on. Feral? That sounds like a bird.
I know. Feral swine.
Okay.
It was pig that was, I don't, like I said, we learned.
So yeah, I thought I heard swine too. Your sound is.
Am I cutting out a little? Sorry.
It gets a little bit choppy. So yeah, okay, yeah. So swine, I heard swine, so I was thinking pig, but then it sounded like a bird, and then
yeah, I think it was a type of pig. But what I'm trying to explain is like I went a little extreme on the protein consumption, and I also forgot about the reality that like protein is not just in meat; it's in nuts and seeds and legumes. And so we don't have to be concerned about having not enough protein. You can find it in other ways. But when I did the Bradley class, they talk about 80 to 100 grams of protein a day, which is a lot. A lot of bodybuilders will do about that or more, actually more. So I learned my lesson. And with the placenta, I don't think it was the healthiest one. There was probably still hormones, because at that time we weren't specifically doing only organic non-hormone. We tried to do non-hormone, but it gets expensive, right? So by the second pregnancy, I was a little more woke to that and understood like, okay, I need to be a little clearer on that. I don't want to, be careful on the placenta. So with my second, I didn't do the dried one. We took the placenta, and my husband, I was shocked that he actually did this. He cleaned it and, did it on I think the cutting board got very sanitized after that, but we cleaned it and we cut it on a cutting board, and he cut it into as many small chunks as we could, and we froze it. And we actually ended up adding one little piece to every smoothie that I made. Now, I know that sounds strange, but the reality is like we are still, we are technically kind of mammals. We're humans, so we're a little different than mammals. But it helped me, I felt like it helped me recover quicker. I had more energy quicker, but it wasn't, I didn't taste it. It was mixed in with some pineapple, I mixed pineapple, some greens, maybe a banana. And at the time, we probably were a little higher on the sugar area, so we put a little honey in there, but I didn't taste it at all. And it did help balance out those things. And my milk came in just perfectly for my second daughter, or first daughter. And then with my third, we, at that point, we felt like we were balanced hormonally, because we had actually chosen not to do the excess, like I say, because I did too much the first time, meat intake. And at that point, we weren't doing any meat. So I really didn't use the placenta on my third, but on my first and second, I did. And there's pluses to the placenta consumption, or even just using the placenta for other things. And I know we've talked about, or not we've talked about, other people have talked about using it if you're trying to, a lot of people can do, they plant a tree and they put the placenta with the tree to help the tree grow. I know that sounds interesting, but there's a lot of nutrients in there. On the same note, there are some doctors that will say that placentas are basically, by the time the baby's born, they're used up. So there's a little discrepancy on that, but there's been more pluses than negatives for using that as a balancing tool, using that as a great way to bring back your blood supply, and also to help with your milk coming in. So that's kind of the idea behind it.
Okay, so do you have your placenta smoothie recipe in your book, your recipes?
I don't know that I had a recipe specifically for that, but I do have a smoothie recipe. Into that, you could add a piece of the placenta.
Maybe you should put like how much. I
Okay.
don't know where I would start. I don't even know how big a placenta is. That's how foreign I am to having a child. I will see one day when that happens. But yeah, I think that would be a great addition to say, like, you know, you can put, I don't know, a tablespoon or whatever it is that you put in of the placenta to the smoothie.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I don't know that we had an exact art to that, or exact decision on exact. I mean, like I said, he cut it up, but we didn't do it scientifically, like exactly ounceage. But yeah, I can share.
That would be an interesting thing to know, though. If you're ever researching, like how much is a good, like a therapeutic amount that's good for a new mother to take. So they, you know, because I know even with everything else I do, it's all about the dosing. It's like if you don't have enough,
and that's why a lot of and that's why a lot of people will do encapsulated, because then they know the exact amount. So if that feels more comfortable for people, I say by all means go ahead. And there's different ways people use the placenta, and there's a way you can look it up and find out the different ways that people might do it. That's what worked for us. And then the last time we had our baby, we just didn't even need it at that point, which is kind of exciting. But then I don't even know what we did. I think we still may have it deep frozen. So
yeah, that is so interesting. I think I would take it capsulated probably. I don't think I do the placenta smoothie. I think
right. Well, and some people will save, and that's what I did with my first birth, is save the capsules for when you're going through the change. I'm having a moment here. The change when you shift from being able to have a child, and then you go through. Why can't I come up with the word right now? Menopause. Thank you. I was like, it's M. I'm getting zapped on my computer right now. I don't know.
That's a long time.
I know, but if you freeze it correctly and seal it correctly, that's the idea, is that you take that to help through that process. So.
Okay. Well, now I know another way to take placenta.
Right.
So, oh my gosh, now you got my mind in a rabbit hole. I'm just thinking about, I bet someone has a business doing this.
Like, well, the woman I brought it to dries it for us, and I mean,
like, I bet somebody collects people's placentas and sells it. I just can't help but think that happens.
Possibly. I don't know. I've never looked into that.
That would be so strange. I mean, we do some weird things in the world, but I mean, I guess if it helps. So one thing that I learned, which I know you're a vegan and are probably kind of weird about this, but I hear it works too, is taking a uterus glandular. So
I heard you say that.
Yeah, glandulars are really interesting. When I was a vegan, I would have been like, why would you do this? But then I started working with Doctors Research and that supplement company, and they had them in a lot of supplements. And so one of their most popular ones was one for the thyroid, and they put the thyroid glandular in there, and they get all their sources from bovine from New Zealand, which they raise their cows properly there,
Right.
apparently. And so anyways, so we don't have to worry about all those extra toxins and hormones and garbage that they put in these animals. And I remember taking different types of glandulars, and it works. I mean, it works therapeutically, like when you take certain types of essential oils, because I know you're into that. So it's amazing. And so I use a lot of the glandulars when I work with hormones, because you're basically getting everything you need for that gland. So the thyroid, I mean, there's certain nutrients, there's certain vitamins and minerals and hormones that is needed to build a healthy thyroid. The same with the uterus. There's certain hormones and nutrients and et cetera to build a healthy uterus. So it's all in there. It's people used to eat these different parts of the animals before we became more civilized. And so, or actually in certain countries, they still do eat these things. We're just, Americans are just more of a meat and potato type of people versus, versus other countries where they literally will eat the whole animal. So anyways, so that's how I think about it. It's like, it really is almost like eating food, but you're also getting tons of nutrients in it as well too. And the uterus glandular is one that I had researched for postpartum. There was a period of time where within a year or so, I was hearing all these different women having postpartum depression. And I had to look into it, because I mean, I'm a holistic doctor. I mean, I have to help them figure out what to do.
Right.
And so obviously the main theme with this whole series I'm doing is it all starts with the conception, and probably even generations before and before and before and before.
Oh,
but
yeah.
the story in itself. But at the same time, what do we do when certain things like this arise? And so that's another thing that I would recommend. I mean, I probably would do both now that I've experienced using the uterus glandular with people. So that's one way. I mean, if someone really is opposed to animal products completely, some doctors I know I work with, they're like, can you please just do this for a period of time? And sometimes the vegans will do it. But if you really just, it's toil against your conscience, all that, I get it. Maybe there's some herbs that you can use as well too. What would you recommend? I know you use oils a lot.
Yeah, for the oils, I don't necessarily, I was actually focused more on some herbs, because oils are useful, but herbs are a little more gentle. For hormone balancing, I know chlorella helps with hormone balancing and detoxing. It's a little more gentle than taking another form of seaweed or sea vegetable. For that, maca root is good for hormone balancing and helps with some rest and sleep. So those are the two that I pulled up immediately that I was thinking I wanted to share with you guys. But chlorella I've been using, and maca root, I actually really like the smell of it. I know that sounds weird, but it reminds me of peanut butter, but it's not.
Yeah, I used to take maca. Now that you're saying that, I'm like, I want some maca. It's been many years probably since I took it, but when I used to make a powdered concoction that I would put in my smoothies when I was in college to help with my energy and focus and all that. And maca was one of those things I would put in there. That and Eleuthero, I really like that. I believe it's Siberian ginseng.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know how that works with postpartum, but
I don't know. That might be something interesting, because it does give you a lot of energy. And postpartum, you got to be careful what you're consuming. I was to the point where I wouldn't even eat chocolate at a certain point, because I was trying to get my daughter to sleep at a certain time throughout the day and take her naps so that I could get her to sleep longer at night. And so we do have to consider that. They say you can have a cup of coffee. Some research says that once a day, but it depends on the person. If I have a cup of coffee, I'll be jittery as all, and you won't want to talk to me, because I'll be too excited. That's me. I can even get a little too hyper on my B vitamins. So everybody's a little different, but yeah, I think maybe focusing on an organic form of like chlorella and maca, and then if you choose to do the placenta encapsulation or however you do it, that'll help balance your hormones too.
Okay, so that can also help with the depression that comes with it.
Yes, and the hormones and depressions go hand in hand. There are actually three types of depression that tend to happen after a pregnancy. There's the baby blues, and those usually happen the first 2 weeks after the baby is born, where you may feel just lethargic, sad, emotional, which if you got in a car accident and had an organ ripped out of your body, the placenta, and had a loss of a lot of blood, and then get lack of sleep, that almost kind of naturally seems like it happens, because you're not, if you don't have enough sleep, that's a good way to make someone crazy. That's a documented way to do that to people, but we don't want to do that. But that happens the first few weeks until we get the baby on somewhat of a schedule and we actually nap when the baby's napping. Saying that, I didn't always do that. It's hard because you think I've got to cook, I've got to clean, I need to take a shower, but just all the things that come with the first few weeks. So baby blues is generally happens for many moms. And the second one is the postpartum depression that you talk about. That is something that is very much real, and people may think, oh, well, you're just emotionally, well, yeah, there's a lot of emotions involved in having a baby, and there's a lot of hormones that go all over the place. So yeah, hormone balance is important, but postpartum depression usually subsides within a few months at most. But if it goes on beyond that, then it definitely is important to, even before that, if you feel like you need to see a doctor about that. And I would even encourage a naturopath doctor, or a natural doctor. And then the third one is postpartum psychosis, and that one is only about 2% of the population that have children. So it's very low on the scale of possibilities, but the psychosis, it means that you kind of, you go to the point where you might need to go to a cycle ward if you let it get to that point. But realistically, the prevention of these things and taking care of these things, because they do happen, is making sure that we're understanding our needs are being met, one, and that we have a team of people around us to help us, so that we're not just having the baby and I can do it on my own. Because as a mommy, we start to think, I've got this, mama bear, like I can do this myself, and this is my baby, give me the baby, I'll do what I need to do. But to see ahead of time, when you have a clear mind before the contractions start, who do I need around me? Who would I like to help me? Is my mom around that she'd be able to help? Maybe your mom's not in the picture. With me, my mom was taking care of my dad, so she's helped a lot, but not that as much as I could use her, but she's been a blessing. But considering that, and then we talked about meeting at church, whatever faith base you are a part of, like, do you have that community? People will sometimes do meal trains the first few weeks. That can be a support with a caveat, like make sure that people understand that you're trying to eat as clean as possible, because it still goes to the baby. Whatever you consume goes into the milk. Yes, your body filters stuff a little, but we want to make sure we're still keeping it as clean as possible. And then finally, the other thing is just to make sure that you have, once you get your baby into somewhat of a sleep pattern, that you're taking care of yourself. So it's a new world for the baby, but it's a new world for you, mommy. You're learning how to take care of yourself, and actually, as people will say, make sure you put your oxygen mask on first. When you get on the airplane, you got to put your oxygen mask on first if they start to go down, before you take care of it. And that seems really foreign to think, oh no, I got to take care of the baby first. If you can't breathe and you're not healthy and getting a good amount of rest and nutrients, you won't be able to be the mom that you need to be to take care of that baby. And that's a challenge. I mean, even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking to myself, have I been doing my best of focusing on me? And it sounds so selfish in our world. It's like, oh, I don't want to be selfish. It's not being selfish if you're making sure you're healthy, because if the caretaker's not healthy, the baby can't be taken care of.
Oh my God, that's such a good word. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think for a lot of moms that, I mean, even though I'm not a mom, I work with a lot of people, right? So I hear it, I see it in people's actions and things like that too, where they get so overwhelmed with taking care of their children, which, I mean, I'm sure that's like it's a huge responsibility. It's a job in itself. There's a reason why we have stay-at-home moms, because it's a whole job itself. But at the same time, I know, like, okay, let's just, my businesses are my baby, right? So that takes a lot of effort. I have people I'm working with and working for, and XYZ, right? If I'm not, I know if I don't get up and I don't take care of myself in the morning or just throughout my life, if I don't eat healthy, if I don't exercise, and my mental, emotional stuff is not, I'm not being fed in the right things. I know I'm not going to be the most successful in taking care of my baby, my businesses and things that I need to attend to. And so I can only imagine, the same thing when you're having kids, you have this responsibility of life that you're trying to take care of. I mean, if you don't have energy, for that, a lot of people don't have energy. So if people don't have energy, how are they going to be able to manage all of the responsibilities that comes with being a mom and being able to be in tune with, where the kid is and what they're doing and et cetera, making sure they're on the right path. So there's that. And then emotionally too, I mean, if you're not feeding your spirit and if your body chemistry is all off, then you might start lashing out probably on your children. or just not maybe be the nicest mom or have the most patience, etc. If you're not emotionally balanced as well too, because of your chemistry or what you're doing daily to make sure you're mentally healthy and
Right.
sane,
And
is there.
I was just going to say, and I think it's important as we become parents to have grace with ourselves, have mercy and grace, and just understand you may make mistakes. And don't hang on to that, because I'll tell you what, the kids will forget it pretty quickly, unless it's an ongoing, consistent thing that's going on that's too extreme for them. But they get over it when you're like, oh, I shouldn't have yelled at them, or I shouldn't have screamed, and we have to let go of it and just give it to God and trust that this child will be okay, and make sure, like I mentioned before, to have things in place, help in place, support in place. There's another thing I didn't mention. There's nursing circle meetups that I think are super good, especially for first-time moms, that they meet up and they just, because you're sitting there, and sometimes it feels like, for me, I'm in timeout in nursing because I can't show my breast. Well, the reality is that that's the source of life for my baby right now. There's nothing to be shamed for having that maybe temporarily exposed to try and put the baby on. But having nursing circles, there's postpartum depression support groups, and I've sent some links to you, Dr. Jacqueline. Maybe you could share this underneath.
Yeah,
this.
I'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, oh good, there's all notes. So all those links are very useful. But just making sure you use your resources, not use, but take advantage of resources, take advantage of family that are willing to help, because it's a precious new life, and your life's important too, especially if we're looking at postpartum depression or psychosis, or even just the baby blues. We got to make sure that we understand moms are super important. And reality is, I say this without trying to sound arrogant or anything, but mommies kind of make the world go round. We birth new life. We have this amazing power inside of us to bring new life. And yes, the man, the father is a huge part of that, but we're the ones that hold it for 9 months and make sure the baby comes, and then continue holding that baby and nursing and keeping that baby healthy. So it's so important that we take care of that fourth trimester and taking care of the baby. Now they're out in the world, but then ourselves in this new world, and make sure that we're well balanced and well supported.
Okay. All right. So the last question I want to ask you is about milk supply. How do we optimize our body so that we can have a good milk supply?
Okay. I'll keep this simple and to the point, like I talked about before. Hydration, good hydration. Water, coconut water, and juices that are fresh. For herbs that promote more milk production, fenugreek. It's kind of tart at first, but you can mix it with other things and make a tea out of it when your supply is low. Fennel, you can consume it in tea form, or if you have essential oil that's a clean essential oil, you can use a drop or two of that. And then learning just how to consume a healthy diet will keep that up. For me, a lot of oatmeal was my consistent thing. I didn't used to eat oatmeal, but then I made it happen. And I'm going to share the Le Leche League and then also Kelly Mom a link. They talk about oatmeal does help with milk production. And then just learning about different holds. You may find, and as I mentioned that other link, Le Leche League, it's about the holds. If you're not holding the baby right and they're not on there correctly, they may not be getting sufficient amount of milk. And if they're not getting enough milk, the body's not going to make more milk because the body doesn't think the baby needs it. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So we talk about the herbs, we talk about the hold, and then also just making sure you don't, if you're trying to breastfeed, it's super important not to supplement with formula. Our bodies are made, unless there's some medical reason that your body's not functioning the way it was made, to produce milk. So anybody that's had trouble with that, just understand, I get your situation. I'm not judging you, but I'm just trying to explain that we were made for that. So if you can drink and consume herbs that you might need, or there's mama milk teas, and then there's mama cookies that they sell. It's a lot of it is oatmeal based, and you'd be surprised. But oatmeal really is interesting. It helps with that milk production, the fenugreek and the fennel, and then the not supplementing and making sure that we build up our supply based on demand. So if your baby drinks, your body will make more, and you will get engorged at a certain point, which I joke that you might look larger than you've ever looked in your life, and may feel like you need to be on the big screen, but it's just a natural process of your body balancing it out. So then the final thing I mentioned, the free support from the Leche League, they will do through weekly meetings over the phone, or you might be able to go to the Leche League actual location. I know with the times like they are right now, there is that concern about with the virus and making sure, like, how do I interact with others? The one thing I would mention is just understand the milk that you provide is, if not, it's, I believe, stronger than any vaccine or any medication that is on the market. I realize I say that with respecting that that's out there, but this is something that no one can reproduce except for yourself. You're making the milk for your baby, made just for them. It's actually, in a way, it's a supplement just for them, just for baby Paul or baby Eliana or baby Tally or whatever your baby's name is. So realizing that you are the baby's protection at that point. So if you do go somewhere, how important it is that you still continue to nurse if you're concerned, until you feel that it's the right time to end. A lot of times, the American Pediatric Society says you can nurse up till 2 years old. My baby's about to be 2. She still is going for me. I'm like, I'm getting a little tired of it, but she needs it, and I'm okay with that. And so as we wean her, we can do natural weaning and let baby-led weaning, and that's something that I've come to terms with. This is what needed to happen. And some others maybe have something else going on in their life, and they just really want to wean the baby, and that's okay too. Figure out what works for you, but also for the baby. I really encourage just seeing what the baby's needs are. So,
yeah. At Hippocrates, they were talking about moms that breastfeed their children for even past 2 years. I mean, some of them, there were some more of extreme examples. I mean, up to 8 or 9 years old. Some people are like, what? I can't imagine doing that. But a lot of why we stop this sooner than keep it going longer, I think, is, I mean, we get tired. We're living in a fast-paced society, but the social, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like, it's just awkward. It's awkward to, in society at this point in day and age to nurse your children past probably around that age, even at 2 years old for some people. They're probably like, why are you still nursing them? So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's that stigma, but like, thankfully we have smaller children. People think they're younger than they are, but it's okay. But yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is the way you're made. Actually, it is a very healing thing that comes through our bodies. And there's even a joke that there's a shirt in a milk group that I'm a part of online that says we're selling the shirts that talk about how I make milk. What's your superpower? And I'm like, I need to get one of those, but I'm almost done with this process.
Yeah. All right, Nicole. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and talking about this whole process, because I think that mothers or people that are trying to plan to conceive and have children, I think it's very good information to know up front. So we can do this in a more holistic manner and in a way that really sets our kids up for success with their health, physically, but also emotionally too, as we addressed that even holding the baby when they're first born is so important, and being there versus getting them strapped away and somewhere else and getting, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And there's stuff that talks about skin to skin and how important that is emotionally, mentally, for a child, and to help regulate their temperature. And there's so many studies that we could talk about, but yeah, it's super important.
Yeah, actually, if you want to send me some, I'll put it in the notes as well, because I think that would be good for people to be able to have those studies and make educated decisions about how they're going to have their children, from the beginning when they conceive to the birthing process and even after. So thank you so much for that. I know you work with a lot of people that are trying to get pregnant with your coaching, your health coaching, or even new moms. I know you're very into working with the plant-based diet as well. So people that are into that, Nicole is your go-to girl for health coaching. So can you tell the listeners where to find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Honor Your Vessel, on our Facebook link that we put in there. I don't have a current website going. I'm more involved with email and online, and I have 3 kids. So it's hard to add that social media part to it, but that's what you can find me there. You can send an email to honoryourvessel@gmail.com is the best direct contact.
Okay, yeah. So you're very selective then who you take on, and you make sure it sounds like you make sure it's a really good fit because of that. Yeah. So definitely reach out to her, honoryourvessel@gmail.com, and then she has her Facebook page, Honor Your Vessel, and has that little heart you can see in the background, so you know it's her. And again, thank you so much. So honored to have you on here. And thank
Yeah.
you so much, listeners, for coming and listening to this. I hope that you were blessed. I hope that some of you that are planning on having children or having more children, that you take some of these nuggets and your birthing process is way more peaceful, less painful, and more thriving and healthier children as a result too. So thank you again for
Thanks for having me.
coming and listening.
Yes.
All right, listeners, have a nice week, and we will continue this women's health series. I'm Dr. Jacqueline. I'm here so you know. I hope you got a lot of nuggets from that episode. There's just so much to learn as a woman and helping balance our body and be able to give life to a newborn and raise these healthy children. And then, of course, we don't want to get wrinkles when we grow old. And a lot of us are losing our mind and we're losing our joints. I mean, there's so much. And then on top of that, then there's weight loss. Have you ever thought about, man, it'd be so much easier to be able to lose weight if I did not crave that cake every day or some other bad thing like cookies, etc.? Well, we have Glucose Optimizer. So along with your CellCore protocol, you can add the Glucose Optimizer in to help balance your blood sugar, help fight those cravings. And you'll see here, there's a lot of other things it does. It protects against heart disease. It helps increase muscle mass. Now, as a woman, you might think, I don't want to have big muscles, but I'm one that doesn't have big muscles and I work out all the time and lift a lot of weight. Lean muscle keeps you thin. So with that and the combination of something like Glucose Optimizer, weight loss is going to be a lot easier nowadays, you guys. All right, ladies, I hope you enjoyed that show again. Go ahead and check out Glucose Optimizer so you can optimize your weight loss program.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Trinity podcast. Be sure to subscribe for more wellness tips to help you achieve optimal health. Don't forget to rate and review so we can continue to bring you the best content. See you on the next episode.